The entire construction site froze when the rich engineer laughed loudly, pointing at the old bricklayer's trembling hands, unaware that this humiliation would destroy her own empire within hours. The old man lowered his eyes silently, absorbing every insult, while secretly glancing at the structure, as if he knew something about this building that no one else dared to understand. Inside the nearby office, the same engineer proudly presented her project to investors, completely unaware that the very foundation she mocked was about to expose a deadly flaw. Back at the site, a sudden crack echoed through the structure, and the old bricklayer's face turned pale, as if he had predicted this moment long before anyone else noticed the danger. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments what time is it and where are you watching from. Let's start. At that exact moment, her phone rang, his name flashing on the screen, and the truth began to unfold. The man she humiliated was the original architect of everything she claimed as hers. Her voice trembled as she answered the call, but before she could speak, the calm, authoritative tone of the old bricklayer on the other end shattered her confidence completely. Across the construction site, the old bricklayer stepped aside calmly, removing his gloves with dignity, as chaos began to rise behind him, with workers shouting in confusion. Inside a moving luxury car, the engineer rushed toward the site, her mind racing as his words echoed. Every calculation she trusted now felt dangerously wrong. Meanwhile, security cameras captured the growing instability of the structure, and the control room filled with alarms, revealing a disaster that could collapse everything within minutes. Back at the site, the old bricklayer turned once more, his eyes no longer tired, but filled with quiet authority, as if he was finally ready to reveal the truth they all ignored. The engineer rushed into the construction site, her heels hitting the ground fast, but everything had changed. The workers were no longer laughing. They were standing in fearful silence, watching the old man. She stopped just a few steps away from him, her breath uneven, realizing for the first time that the man she mocked was no longer just a worker. He stood like someone in complete control. In the security room, alarms grew louder as one monitor showed a deeper structural failure spreading rapidly, confirming that the design error could bring the entire building down. The old bricklayer finally spoke, his voice calm but commanding, revealing that he had designed the original structure years ago, and that every flaw now was a result of her careless modifications. Her hands slowly dropped to her sides as the weight of truth crushed her pride, realizing that her ambition had nearly caused a disaster, and the man she humiliated was the only one who could save it. Without raising his voice, the old bricklayer gave a precise instruction, pointing toward a weak column, and suddenly every worker moved, not by fear, but by trust in his authority. Inside the office, investors stared at the live feed in disbelief, watching the very man they ignored take full control of a collapsing project within seconds. In a moving car outside, emergency teams sped toward the location, sirens cutting through the air as the situation escalated beyond anyone's control, except his. Back on the site, the engineer slowly picked up a safety helmet, her hands no longer steady, realizing she was no longer leading, but learning from the man she once humiliated. As the structure stabilized under his direction, silence returned. But this time, it wasn't fear, it was respect, rising quietly for the man they never truly saw. Later, in a quiet office meeting, the engineer sat silently as the old bricklayer explained structural corrections, every word exposing how deeply she had misunderstood the project. As he finished, the room fell into silence, and for the first time, the engineer stood up, not in authority, but in respect for the man she once insulted publicly. That evening, inside a luxury car, she stared out the window in silence, replaying every moment of humiliation she caused, now feeling the weight of regret pressing heavily on her chest. In a dimly lit hospital corridor, she waited anxiously after hearing the old man collapsed from exhaustion, realizing that even after saving everything, he paid the price alone. When she finally entered the room, she saw him resting quietly. No pride, no anger, just a man who did what was right, leaving her standing there with tears she couldn't hide anymore. She slowly pulled a chair beside his bed, sitting quietly for the first time in her life, without pride, just watching the man who carried knowledge she never truly valued. In a quiet hotel lounge later that night, she sat alone with untouched tea, her mind replaying his calm voice and the moment her arrogance collapsed in front of everyone. Meanwhile, in a high-security room, officials reviewed documents revealing his true identity, a retired chief structural architect whose designs built half the city's skyline. The next morning, she walked slowly through the construction site again, but this time there was no noise, only workers respectfully stepping aside as she passed in silence. She stopped at the same wall where she once laughed, gently touching the bricks, realizing that true strength wasn't in power, but in the hands that built everything silently. Later that day, she stood outside the hospital again, holding her phone tightly, gathering courage to call someone for the first time, not as a leader, but as someone seeking guidance. In a quiet office, the call connected, and she spoke softly, asking him to return, not as a worker, but as the one who truly deserved to lead the entire project. Across the hospital room, the old bricklayer opened his eyes slowly, hearing her words through the call, his expression calm but thoughtful, as if deciding something far bigger than her request. A brief silence followed, but instead of anger, his voice returned steady and composed, reminding her that respect is earned through actions, not titles or wealth. Back at the construction site, she returned once more, but this time she didn't walk ahead. She walked beside the workers, quietly learning, step by step, rebuilding not just the structure, but herself. Under the bright morning sun, she carefully carried a stack of bricks herself, her hands no longer delicate, but determined, as workers silently watched her transformation with growing respect. In the office later, she stood beside the blueprint table again, but this time she listened more than she spoke, carefully noting every correction suggested by the team. That evening in her car, she finally allowed herself a quiet smile, not of pride, but of growth, knowing she was becoming someone stronger than before. Back in the hospital, she entered again, but this time not with guilt, instead with quiet confidence, ready to thank the man who changed everything without asking anything in return. As she stepped inside, he looked at her once, and without words, a quiet understanding passed between them, marking the moment where respect replaced everything else. She stepped closer to his bedside, her voice soft but sincere, finally saying the words she had never spoken before. "I was wrong." And the silence that followed carried deep meaning. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he simply looked at her with calm eyes, as if measuring the truth behind her words rather than the words themselves. Finally, he gave a slight nod, not as acceptance of apology, but as acknowledgement of her change, a silent approval that carried more weight than any spoken forgiveness. Days later, in a high-end office meeting, she introduced him not as a worker, but as the chief consultant, her voice steady, her respect clear in front of everyone. And as they both walked out of the office side by side, no longer divided by status, the journey from humiliation to respect stood complete, leaving behind a lesson no one would forget. Back at the construction site, both stood together reviewing the progress. But this time, there was no hierarchy, only collaboration, as every decision was made with mutual understanding. During a short tea break, they sat together quietly, sharing a moment of calm, where no words were needed to express the respect that had finally been earned. In the security room, the same monitors now showed stability and progress, and the team watched with relief, knowing the project was finally in the right hands. Later that evening, she stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, realizing that true success was not about being above others, but about lifting others with you. And far below, the old bricklayer walked through the site one last time that day, not as a laborer, but as a man whose quiet wisdom had rebuilt more than just a building. The next morning, a formal announcement echoed through the office, confirming his new leadership role. And for the first time, every employee listened with genuine respect instead of silent judgment. During a meeting, she handed him the final approval file, her hand steady this time, showing not hesitation, but complete trust in the man she once doubted completely. Later, inside a moving car, they discussed future plans together, no longer separated by ego, but united by a shared vision to build something stronger than before. At the construction site, laughter returned. This time, it was different, filled with unity and respect, as workers and leaders stood on the same ground without fear or pride. As the sun began to set, both stood silently watching the building take shape, knowing this wasn't just construction. It was a story of pride broken, lessons learned, and respect rebuilt. The following week, a high-profile inspection team arrived, walking through the site with serious expressions, unaware that the project they once doubted had now become a model of perfection. Inside the office, reports were finalized, and for the first time, her signature carried not just authority, but wisdom shaped by experience and humility. Later, during a quiet walk through the nearly completed structure, he pointed out small details, and she listened carefully, absorbing every lesson like it was her first day again. As they exited, a group of workers greeted them with quiet smiles, no longer divided by status, but united by the shared pride of building something that would stand for years. And in that final moment of the day, as both looked back at the structure one last time, they knew this wasn't just a building. It was a legacy shaped by humility, truth, and respect. Weeks later, the completed building stood tall, shining under the sun, as people gathered outside, admiring a structure that once stood on the edge of collapse. Inside the grand hall,
I'm still waiting for your return. Though the stars say it's untrue,
but equal.
somewhere deep inside this broken heart I still
In a quiet corner, she paused and looked at him, a faint smile forming, not out of pride, but gratitude for the lesson that changed her forever. He simply nodded once again, the same quiet gesture, but this time it carried completion. The journey from silence to respect had finally reached its end. And as they walked forward together into the light, the story ended, not with power or wealth, but with a truth that real greatness is built on respect, not status. The story didn't end there, because days later, new workers joined the site, and they were told a
You
story,
don't have to turn around.
not of failure, but of a man who built with silence, and a
You don't
leader
have to sue me.
who learned to listen. In the office,
Just
her
keep
leadership style had changed completely, her voice
I'll be right behind
softer, her decisions wiser, and her focus no longer on control, but on building something meaningful together. One evening, as rain gently fell over the city, she
You
stood
keep
near the
walking
window,
through the shadows,
remembering the day everything
like you're
almost
carrying
collapsed,
it all,
and how that moment rebuilt her
never
from
showing
within.
any weakness.
At the same time, the old
Never
bricklayer
letting
walked alone through the
teardrops
quiet
fall.
side at night,
I can see the
running
way
his
you
hand
break
along
it
the walls, feeling the
underneath
strength
that
of something
quiet
built
smile.
the right way.
But you
And
don't
somewhere
have
between
to
those
face
two quiet moments,
all alone
journey
this
truly
whole
found its
damn
meaning.
time.
Not in
You
the
don't
building they
have to
created,
look
but in the
behind.
people they
I'll be
became.
there
A
just
few days later,
outside.
during a formal
When the
seminar,
world
she
gets
stood on
way
stage,
too heavy,
sharing the project's
I'll be
journey.
holding
But
up
instead
your
of taking
sky.
credit, she
You
spoke
don't
about the
have to
man
say
who taught
my
her
name.
what true
I'll
leadership
still
really
hear
means.
you
In the
dark.
audience, he listened
Even if
quietly,
you
his face
never
unchanged,
notice,
but
I've
his
been
eyes
with you
reflected a quiet pride,
from the
not
start.
in recognition, but in the lesson that had finally reached its purpose. After the
you
seminar,
stumble, if you
people
fall,
gathered around her with admiration.
If your light
But she stepped
begins to
aside,
fade,
guiding them
I'll
toward
be
him,
right there
making sure
in
the
the silence,
respect reached the one
making
who
sure
truly
you're
deserved it.
not afraid.
Later that night,
You
both walked out
don't
of the
have to
hall
look
under
behind.
soft city lights,
I'll be
their
there
shadows
just
stretching long
outside.
behind them.
When the
silent
world
symbol
gets
of
way
how
too
far they had
heavy,
come together.
I'll be
And in that
holding up
quiet
your
light,
sky.
without any
You
words,
don't have
both
to say
understood
my
the same
name.
truth.
I'll still
Respect is
hear
not
you
demanded.
in the
It is
dark.
built slowly,
Even if
just
you
like the
never
strongest foundation.
notice, I've
The
been
next
with
morning,
you
the building officially opened,
from the
and
start.
as the ribbon was cut, the crowd
I don't
applauded
need
loudly.
to stand
But their
beside
eyes
you.
were not on the
I don't need
They
to
were on
be
the
the
quiet man
light.
who stood with
If it
dignity.
means that
She
you
stepped
keep
forward to speak,
moving, I'll
but instead
just
of
stay
taking the
here.
spotlight, she gently handed the microphone
outside.
to him, her gesture louder than
You
any
don't
speech
have
she
to
could have
look
given.
behind.
He spoke
I'll
only a
be
few
there
words,
just
his voice
outside.
calm and simple,
When the world
reminding
gets
everyone
way
that
too
buildings
heavy,
stand strong
I'll be
not because of
holding up
money,
your sky. You don't have to
patience,
say my
and hard
name.
work.
I'll
As
still
the
hear
clouds
you
filled the
in
air
the
again,
dark.
she looked at
Even
him with
if
quiet
you
gratitude,
never
knowing this
notice,
journey
I've been
had
with
changed
you
her more than any
from
success ever
the
could.
start.
And as the camera slowly faded out on them standing side by side, one truth remained. Never judge someone by their role, because the strongest foundations are
You
built
don't have to turn
by the
around.
ones you overlook. Follow for more powerful stories.